Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic Podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 16.
16. I'm so excited about 16 because I didn't have to do any research for 16, all right? Because there are so many significant things about 16. It blows me away. I love the number 16. So, first of all, power of 2. Gotta love powers of 2. And technically, this is episode 10 if you're counting in hexadecimal.
I'm a big fan of hexadecimal.
People who don't know what computers are don't know what hexadecimal is. And basically, that is a base 16 number system where you have the numbers 0 through 9 and then A, B, C, D, E, and F. A being 11, B being 12, all the way up to F being 15. And then you roll over to 10, which is actually 16 in base 10.
Yeah.
Different number-based systems blew me away in college when I learned about them. I just love them to death.
Back when I used to teach middle school, I would teach my middle schoolers a little bit about binary, and then I would show them some hexadecimal. And like you said, it blew their minds.
So this is important that we hit these powers of 2 milestones because the next one, every time we hit one, obviously the way the math works is we're doubling the number of episodes that we did previously.
Well,
so the next one is 32, Ben.
Speaking of hitting milestones, let's talk about week 2 of the Bad at Magic Fitness Challenge.
Nice segue. Well done.
So you did a great job setting it up on our website, badatmagic.live, and we invited our audience to participate. And I've had a couple of people talk to me about wanting to join in, but so far it's just you and me and 2 other people.
Yeah, 2 other people who are Alicia, clearly your spouse.
And not Josh's wife.
Some random person that is just not Josh's wife. Who knows who that could be. But this is actually something I want to point out is the way I set up the website is you and I, even on the back end, have no idea who any of these people are, theoretically. The only thing that you put in there is a random email address just so you can log in with. We're not going to email anybody. And then a username. And the username can be whatever you want. So I was surprised, honestly, that you used Ben, though it's probably good since we're the host and the co-host that people know who we are on the website.
Right.
But if people are listening and they wanted to, but they were trepidatious about it, it's totally anonymous. Put in some random username. No one knows who you are. You can be the big cheese and see how much weight you lose.
Okay, fine. Put in a random username, but put in a legitimate email address. Because if at some point we decide to do a contest, which we'd been thinking about doing, I want to be able to reach the person that wins.
Ooh, subtle hint, people. There could be prizes at the end.
Yeah. Okay, so go to badatmagic.live, click on the link at the top to get to our fitness tracker, and we're going to be doing this through August, and I think even if we do some kind of contest, we won't set a cutoff date till April, so that gives people who are maybe listening to this in the past some time to kick in. The year is 2020. Come join us in the Bad at Magic Fitness Challenge.
We could leave it up for ever if we really wanted to, I suppose. People listening to us in the far distant future could log in and use an already antiquated army system to measure their body fat.
Yeah. My wife was like, how is this figuring anything out about me? I'm like, I don't know.
So it is an army system, which tells me 2 things. One, that the United States military spent an absurd amount of money with researchers and scientists to develop an irrefutable method of analyzing somebody's body fat. And 2, there is absolutely no way this is anywhere close to accurate.
I love it. Those are both true. I'm sure of it. Yeah. So I came out scratch on this week, and it looks like you and me and you and Alicia and not Josh's wife all had a good week.
We did have a good week. I think that is partly due to the fact that I can't eat out anymore. I didn't get my giant Chinese food meal that I always get on Tuesdays and my giant fatty pizza that I get on Fridays for reasons that we'll discuss later.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into that, I want to forego the usual bad at English for bad at Italian.
Oh, dear. This is how can you be bad at so many languages, Ben?
Well, so, as you know, I lived in Italy for 2 years and made a lot of friends there. And about a month ago, one of my friends in Italy reached out to me and started asking me about the coronavirus before it was a thing. I was like, that was kind of weird. And they messaged me in Italian, I just speak Italian. Because I told you, the language barrier there is deep and profound. And so I would, run it through Google Translate and write back to them and stuff. But my mind and heart has been on my friends in Italy. Because I do have some good friends in Italy. As you know, Andrea and my my unit interpreter, Giovanna and Raffaella, and a lot of friends I have in Italy. And so I want to tell you a story about something we did in our family. We have this activity we participate in that's sponsored by the church but adopted by our family that we call Family Home Evening. And on Monday nights, our whole family gets together and we follow a little like set program for an activity night we do together. We have a song and a prayer and a lesson and a game and a treat every week. And one of the ways that we keep everyone participating is we have this little chart. I'll post a photo of it in the show notes, where we give assignments to each person, and it's a rotator. So every week a different person picks the song, and a different person picks the treat, and a different person picks the game. Well, as our kids started growing up, we needed more and more activities so that everyone had an assignment every week. And once we'd reached 8 people in the family, and my youngest daughter got to the point where she was old enough to do something, we'd run out of activities. Like, we had more people than there were activities in our Family Home Evening.
Okay, so you have to come up with some arbitrary random little things like, oh, we get to pick the color of the tablecloth.
Yes,
Yay!
Exactly. So we had a conductor that just like tells everyone what their assignments are, and that was good enough. But we needed one more activity. So I kind of did a poll on social media to see what other people thought, and one person had this really good idea that they suggested that I liked, and we ended up adopting, but we need to come up with a name for it. So because we were living in Italy and it kind of fit what we were doing in Italy, we gave it an Italian name. So I'll tell you the word that's going to be our batted Italian word today, and that is Amato, or Amata, because Italian words are gendered. So it's Amato if it's masculine and Amata if it's feminine.
Amato, Amata, whatever.
So the meaning of the word Amato is beloved. And what we did for this activity in our Family Home Evening for Beloved is every week, whoever was assigned to the spot for Beloved, while we were having our treat, we would start off this little dialogue that would go like this: I love blank because, and then everyone in the family would take a turn saying something that we love about that person. And so if it were my wife Alicia and we came to her, we would say, I love Alicia because, or the kids would say, I love Mama because, and I would say, because she's, and that's how it works. And we'd all take turns. And it got to become such a, we've done this for a decade now, almost. And it's become so rote in our family that it's funny how little things like this can have a side effect. And in our family, everyone's gotten so good at saying nice things about other people that it just becomes second nature. And I remember we'd had some guests over once and they'd asked us something, what we like about each other. And we all just speak so naturally like this now. It's just become part of our family vocabulary.
So this is the reason, people, if you're listening right now and you had the same epiphany that I did, this is part of the reason Ben is so freaking insufferably nice, is because he's literally training his brood to be this nice. It's like active work.
It's a lovely place to be, my house. Okay, so I picked this word because my Italian friends are beloved. And I was also thinking, at a time when the world's in a bit of upheaval and chaos, I'm grateful for the people that I love. So I'm going to make you suffer through this, Josh.
Oh, dear. Hey, hang on. Before we go into this, I just want to put the footnote in here that aren't half of your Italian friends like black market auto parts dealers?
One is.
One is. The rest are just buyers. It's fine.
Right. So I've listened to some past episodes of the podcast, and frequently my wife gives me a hard time because you are very good at pointing out my virtues, and I'm not very good at taking compliments about them. So I'm going to make you sit still where I talk about some of yours.
Oh, dear.
So,
people,
I love Josh because...
Just go ahead and tune out. Skip the next 3 minutes of the podcast, people. You'll thank yourself.
So
later.
I took some time and I sat down and I made a list of some of the things I like about you, Josh. I like you because you chose me as a friend. And for the record, you chose me first. I like you because you have a brilliant mind. You love your wife and children. You make me laugh, and you're a loyal friend.
I mean, that's it. I'm dead. I got nothing. I'm out. We'll see you later. No, podcast over.
All right.
Okay. I'll stay here. I'm just kidding.
So,
well, thank you, Ben. That's super nice for you to say.
The batted Italian word of the day is amato or amata. Amato if you're talking about a male, amata if you're talking about a female.
We're going to go ahead and say all those times that I point out why you're a better person than I am. We're going to roll all those up in like a clip show someday, and we'll call that my contribution to this conversation.
We need to talk about the elephant in the room, Josh. And the elephant in the room is a tiny little microscopic virus.
Okay. So for those of you who have been living under a rock or are listening to this in the far future or somehow in the far past, I don't know how that's, whatever. It's currently March 21st, 2020, and the United States is ramping up into what has become, the coronavirus or the COVID-19 pandemic.
Nothing like this has ever happened in our lifetimes.
Yes, but we're not there yet. We're trying to do the background. Like, this is a problem that the world as a whole has been dealing with for several months, and we were vaguely aware of probably starting, a month, 6 weeks ago or something?
In January, it was starting to come in the news that there was something going on in China.
Right. So, but it wasn't really, it was one of those things that happens overseas. No one pays attention to it. We've got an election cycle coming up. There's tax seasons here. So our focus was elsewhere. But now finally it made the jump across the pond. It started to infect people in the U.S. We saw European countries starting to fall like dominoes. And so the writing was kind of on the wall that Godzilla's in Europe and he's coming for us. So hunker down, people.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you're not familiar with COVID-19, it is the problem is that it's so infectious. I think it's a very highly infectious disease. It transmits very easily from person to person through, I think their latest is that they think it's through micro droplets, so like coughing or sneezing. And then it gets into one of your mucous membranes, either through your nose, your mouth, your eyes, so no touching your face. And it gives very flu-like symptoms for the most part, and some people experience very mild or even asymptomatic. But it can be incredibly dangerous for people that are young or have compromised immune systems. The research that I've seen the understanding is that, one, it attacks the lungs specifically, and two, it sends your immune system into overdrive, which can then basically do a lot of friendly fire to lung tissue, which then makes you more susceptible to other infections like pulmonary edema and, not pulmonary edema, but like pneumonia and things later on.
Yeah, and it's just the perfect storm of a brilliant genetic weapon. It just infiltrates your cells, replicates itself. It's contagious long before it's symptomatic, and so it's already being transmitted around, and it lasts long on surfaces, and it's easily picked up, and it just sneaks around and gets people. But then, if it was any faster to show symptoms, it wouldn't spread as fast. If it was any deadlier, it wouldn't go as far. I mean, it's like the perfect storm.
Right. And this is why it's not quite to the level of a plague, because its mortality rate isn't that high, but it is still much more fatal than like a flu or a common cold would be, but it's just
by a
as
factor
virulent.
of about 10.
Right. So that's the problem. And we've seen other countries that have, like Italy, like China, that had to go into full lockdown because it was starting to overwhelm their healthcare systems. And so recently in the United States, and this all took off in like the last week, is we're doing the social distancing and enforced isolation. And in a lot of places, they're starting to have government mandated shutdowns of public gatherings and public businesses.
Yeah, so I'm in the state of Illinois, and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has kind of been leading the way on this charge. He closed down schools, he closed down restaurants and bars, and on Friday at 6 o'clock, he announced that they're doing basically a mandatory an isolation. They're not enforcing it like martial law, but basically everywhere is supposed to close down starting 5 o'clock today.
Right, and we've had similar things going on in Arizona. Governor Ducey, this is spring break for my school district, so my kids were already going to be off school anyway. But he announced last weekend that they were closing schools for 2 full weeks. And then just a couple of days ago, he announced that they're closing schools for an additional 2 weeks. We fully expect that to be extended through the end of the school year. A lot of states in the United States have already closed schools for the remainder of the school year. Major sports have all shut down. Major conventions of any gathering have all been canceled.
And it didn't happen all at once. It wasn't obvious at first. It kind of happened a little bit at a time, and each new thing was a surprise. Like when the NBA canceled the rest of the season, I was like, really? Wow.
Well, and that just goes to show you how we weren't prepared or we didn't see this really coming. Like the government is taking what I think are proper steps to, flatten the curve? We're going to talk about that next. The idea behind all this, everybody stay in your homes. If you can work from home, work from home. If you absolutely have to go out, be safe about it. Stay at least 6 feet away from somebody else. Wash your hands all the time. Like all the things that we need to do to slow the spread of the infection. And that's the key, is we're trying to slow it down. There's no doubt in anybody's minds that this is still going to rip through the population, that lots and lots of people are going to get sick. But the idea is that if we can slow the spread, then we won't overwhelm our healthcare systems like what has happened in other countries. And so then we'll have enough the resources to adequately care for the people that do fall ill.
And specifically, someone that's acutely infected with this can have difficulty breathing and requires a hospital bed and a ventilator. And there's just a limited number of those. And if too many people get sick at once, then there's just going to be a higher fatality rate because of the lack of availability of those things.
So I can tell you from a personal perspective, like I wasn't taking this seriously at all probably last weekend. I mean,
right.
The spring break was announced and then Governor Ducey closed school for 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, whatever. It's just a sickness. It's not even that super deadly for normal people. It'll be fine. But Nicole was clued into it the entire time because she made me realize something I hadn't even thought about. Because, again, I'm such a selfish, amoral jerk that all I'm thinking about is me. And I'm like, if I get it, I'll probably be fine. I'm a pretty in-shape guy, middle-aged, but it'll be okay. But my son has asthma. And so if Carter was to get it, he's at much higher risk for having, respiratory issues. Wow. And so it's much more important that I don't get sick, not for my own sake, but so I don't bring it home.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people are doing those kinds of calculations right now. One vocabulary word they were using in all this that I wasn't familiar with is the word novel. They were using it to describe it as a novel virus. And my sister explained to me that just means that it's new to our immune systems, whether through immunization or previously having had it, our immune systems don't recognize it, so they don't defend against it.
Right, as opposed to something like the common cold, where they say, this is a random fact that I don't know if it's true or not, but when you're a little kid, you get sick a lot, and then as you get older, you don't. It's because there's a couple hundred strains of the common cold running around, but once you have had enough of them, you have the developed immune system to recognize the others. If this is a virus that's never been recognized by your immune system, then everybody is susceptible to getting it, regardless of how sick you've been in the past or not.
Or something like polio or the measles that you've been vaccinated for and your immune system's already primed for.
Right. And then we still, since it is so novel and so new, there is nothing saying that even if a vaccine could be developed, if that will give you long-term immunity to this illness.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of unknowns. So when we recorded our last episode 2 weeks ago, this wasn't even a thing. Like it wasn't even on our radars. And since then, it's upended our lives.
Yeah, like you and I had mentioned it as like a topic possibly for discussion, like before the show, but we didn't talk about it because we were both in the same headspace where it's in the news, but it's not really, affecting our lives that much. And like you just said, though, this last week has gone crazy because at the beginning of this week, I don't know. All right, where do we want to start? Because I'm just going to launch into anecdotes if we don't.
So I don't think we need to give any more background. I think anybody that's listening to this it's either ancient history or they're living it right now and they're all over it. So let's transition from talking about kind of the global impact and what's going on to what's happening in our lives. Let's start with professionally, because I'm in the United States Air Force and you're an accountant, and this thing has profound impacts on both of our areas.
Yeah, profound impacts on both of our lives, which is crazy because we're so far apart on the professional spectrum.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. So for me, Monday was March 16th, which was the business tax deadline day. If you run a partnership and you needed to file a 1065 return, or if you were an S corp and you needed to file 1120S return, you had to file your tax return on Monday. And like that was my whole focus since January. Like this is tax season. Like it's crunch time. I've been working every Saturday for the last, several weeks. And so we were just 100% focused on these are the clients that are in our office. These are the ones that we've got done. These are the ones we need signatures for. These are the people we need to pay. These are the people we need to get in here to sign stuff. And like we were just go, 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 go. And we talked about this at like the Monday meeting, like, hey, this is becoming more and more of a thing as schools are closing and things. And we need to talk about after we get through this tax season, what we're going to do about it.
Wait,
But
can I pick on
Monday,
a detail you just... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Monday we were just focused on the taxes. Go ahead.
So there was a detail that you mentioned there that I think will be a thread in through all of what we're talking about, and that is a lot of what you do requires physical signatures, which requires you meeting with people in person in order to complete it.
Right, and this was
Is
part of
that
the discussion.
really necessary?
Well, and lo and behold, we come in Tuesday morning, and this is after Governor Ducey closed schools for 2 weeks, and then like my kids were supposed to have gone to like a spring break camp that the school district is putting on that they canceled the night before. Luckily, my wife had already planned on taking Monday off, and she talked to her boss, and all of this was like kind of happening simultaneously. But at least for us, we were very fortunate; it all fell out very, very well.
Well,
Nicole
we're
was already
saying all
taking-
these things like the world, like you said, they canceled this thing the night before. That would have been like, that's so huge. I mean, that has implications on you guys for your childcare and for your plans and stuff like that. But what used to be exceptional is now the norm within a week.
Right. And what was very helpful is that it's not like we didn't have childcare for this entire week. It's everybody in like the North Phoenix Valley all of a sudden had no childcare. So that helps in the idea that like we're not being exceptions to the rule. Like everybody's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
So, like I said, Nicole had already taken Monday off, so she just kept the kids home, and then she was able to talk to her boss, and a lot of her job can be done remotely. They are already a very robust, their business already has VPNs that are set up. They all work on laptops anyway. Their normal staff meetings, even though they're all in the same building, they usually do virtually because there's just a crunch on conference rooms. So it was almost like work as normal for them very much, except they just weren't physically there. Yeah, so that was very fortunate, and they have since gone on to full remote access.
Nicole, you work for a small accountancy firm, right?
I work for a very small accounting firm. It is myself and the owner. We are both EAs, so we're tax specialists. We have a personal tax prep person that does the input and prep for a lot of taxes. We have an office manager, and we just hired a receptionist. So there's 5 of us in a very small building with 4 offices and a front desk and a conference room. And like you said, the way that we've been traditionally set up, a lot of our clients are elderly. A lot of our clients don't have email addresses even. And so they're just used to we call them up and say, hey, it's done, get in here. There are clients that don't have email addresses.
I didn't know there was anyone on earth without email addresses.
Ben, you are preaching to the choir on this one. But my boss has been an EA for 20-something years. And so she's had clients that entire time, and they just never got email addresses.
Wow.
So these guys, they're great people. They're all wonderful people to talk to and work with. But it doesn't change the fact that they come into the building, they drop off their physical papers, we process them, and then we call them back in to sign their physical papers. Anyway, Monday was tax day. We actually got through it very well. So yay for us. We came in Tuesday, and schools have been canceled for 2 weeks. This is not going away. It's becoming more and more of a thing. And the owner of the firm, she had cancer last year, and just she had finished up her radiation therapy and everything 10 months ago. So she still has a weakened immune system. So she's also high risk for this. And so she was very much in tune. She called everybody back into the front office. I'm like, okay, this is a real thing, and we are going to get out in front of it. And I have tremendous amount of respect for her because 90% of the hardcore officers that I worked with in the United States military would not have had this amount of foresight, this amount of decisiveness, or this amount of organizational capability to come up with the plan that she did. Awesome. She came in and she pointed at people. It's you two, your entire job is to cancel or reschedule every single appointment that we've made for the next 3 months. Your job is to start scanning all of the physical documents that we have in this building into our digital system. You, pointed at me, your job is to get a hold of the clients and make sure that they realize what's happening. And so we went full remote starting we prepared for it all week, but as of Friday.
That's awesome.
Yeah, isn't it? And that's just so warm fuzzies for one.
That sounds exhilarating.
Right? It was a very stressful, it was a very tiring week. I had a pounding headache at the end of work every day, but it culminated in yesterday, which was I got up, I went to my computer in my house, which had my voice over IP phone from my office desk sitting next to me, which the way they're configured, you just plug them into any internet and it still has all of my same, like I can pick up the phone and hit the intercom button and call the person on the other side of the city as if she was in the office down the hall, same as always. The phones all ring simultaneously like they always did. And we're just not there. We're just physically, the office is working exactly the same as it was before. We're just not in the office. We spent all week
the IP phone setup, are you the one that configured that?
No, the vendor configured that. My boss is very much up on technology. And so whenever I try to dig into certain things, like specific setups and things, like she has to stop me. She goes, no, that's not what I pay you for. And she has an IT guy that comes in and does third-party contracts. The voice over IP people have been very good doing remote configuration and stuff. She's very good at delegating tasks appropriately. So, no, but yeah, Friday, she has kids and she has the compromised immune system, and she is very much cognizant of the fact that people don't have childcare right now. And with everything going on, that we need to social distance ourselves. A lot of our clients are high risk because they're elderly. Every one of the people that I work with in the office either is high risk or interacts with somebody in their family that is high risk. And so she just kicked us all out. She locked the front door. We told all the clients, doors are shut. Email, fax, or phone call, and we will figure something out, but you're not coming into the office until this whole thing blows over.
Wow. That's a lot of foresight.
It is, but it doesn't stop there, because all week, like if anybody, I don't know if anybody on the podcast is paying attention to tax law or any of the news that's been going on this week.
Yeah, every time this week you keep texting me, you're like, the governor, the state legislature, or the Senate, and I had no idea that there was all these crazy implications of these tax law changes on you guys right in the middle of tax season when you still think you're coming up on all the deadlines.
Well, we still have over 100 tax returns in the office that need to get processed. And originally, our deadline to have stuff in the office was the end of this month. Like, if we told people, get everything into us by March 31st, or else we're cutting you off. We're going to put you in a locked drawer. You're going to pay an extra fee for an extension, and we'll get back to you later. But then earlier this week, the first thing they did was they extended the tax payment deadline. Not the filing deadline, but the payment deadline. So you still had to file by April 15th, but you could pay by July 15th. Then the next day, after we explain that to all of our clients, because that's confusing, you still have to file your taxes by April 15th or file an extension, or you will get penalized. But you don't have to pay. You can pay later. Just file now, pay later. That's what we told everybody. Then the next day, they passed comprehensive, the emergency COVID-19 sick leave act, the paid sick leave. Mm-hmm. So any business that has less than 500 people, at the time of recording, this is probably going to change 6 more times. At the time of recording, the way the law stands is any business with less than 500 people that have employees that were affected by COVID-19, the employer is required by law to give them 2 weeks of paid leave. But the amount of leave that they give is determined by different factors about the employee. The amount that they get paid during that time depends on whether they have COVID-19 or if someone they know has COVID-19 or if it's just for childcare. Those are all different circumstances. And then you can apply for waivers to the Department of Labor. And then the FMLA laws all change to be from non-paid to paid depending on certain circumstances. And so I had to spend an entire day reading a brand new law that had been less than 6 hours old, interpreting it and trying to boil it down for our accounting clients that have employees, trying to explain in layman's terms, okay, what does this really mean for me as a business owner?
Dude, I am fascinated by your boss as the commander of this unit and doling out these tasks. There's so many things going on, so many stuff flying out at you, and she just had to decide what was the most important thing and how to divide it up among the skill sets and the people that she has available to her.
Yes. And like I said, I have a tremendous amount of respect for her because that is better than most military commanders I know could have handled that situation.
Yeah. Wow.
And at the same time, we're all fried. We're just done. This is the last change. The last change that happened was yesterday. And they finally made the filing deadline match the payment deadline. So now you don't even have to file your personal taxes until July 15th.
So you got a bit of breathing room.
Yes, but we have to communicate that to all of our clients. Okay, so everybody that came flying in here to get extensions because of this whole thing, we're going to have to refund all of that money to you because the extension got passed automatically, whatever. And then it's like, everything we said on Monday is now wrong. Now it's this. So here's the new email. Here's the new information. And honestly, like, we put that information out, I think, at noon today. And then my boss calls me on the intercom in my kitchen. And I pick up the phone. She's like, so did you get the email out? It's like, yeah, I just sent it out. You'll see it show up in your box here in a second. She goes, great. We have breathing room. I am totally fried. This has been the worst week ever. That's just quit. Like, we're done. We'll see you on Monday. I'm like, I am good with that. And that's it. Like, we were scheduled
also
to work
good leadership. Wow.
Also good leadership. We were slated to work all day today to start trying to catch up on all the tax returns and things that are in the office. But she's like, you know what? This stuff isn't due for 90 days, so forget it. We're done. Let's just take it off.
Well, Josh, as always, anyone that has the good fortune to have hired you, it is lucky in a time like this when, stuff is tough and there's a lot to do. And I'm sure you're handling it well. So
I'm going to go on a tangent here for a second based on what you just said. And I have told her multiple times that I thank her for hiring me, because when she hired me, I had zero accounting experience. Like, I had just sold my pool cleaning business, and I had taken my second of 3 tests to become an EA. And I was in the interview with her, and I remember explaining, so I've passed 2 of the 3 EA tests, and I'm doing it not necessarily because I want to be an EA, but because I need to demonstrate to people like you that I do have the capacity to do this. I am very smart. I am very hardworking. I will be an asset to your company, even if I don't have the experience you're expecting for somebody in a position like this. And
so do you know why she took a chance on you?
She's told me, apparently I sold myself very well in the interview. It's probably got something to do with just how confident and just dashing I am, I'm sure. But I've thanked her multiple times. She went out on a limb and hired me with little experience, partly because I was able to sell myself, and partly because of the way that I came across. Like, I was a military officer. I have tremendous amount of confidence. Like, I can portray myself in a good light.
Right.
So, and yes, these are the circumstances, like you said, that where this pays off, where I have a diverse skill set, and like, you need me to interpret some tax law and somehow email all of our clients today. Well, for some reason, I can do that. I don't know why.
Yeah. All right. So you're ready for my professional? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I was going to transition you, because everybody listening, like, oh, this guy's droning on and on about tax law. Like, it was so exciting. Listen, people, I felt like I was on the front lines of battle. It was super awesome this week. All the tax law changes. Big fan. But if you want something a little more exciting, I think Ben was actually on the front lines of actual battle. So let's transition to somebody that's really exciting.
Okay. So recently, about 6 months ago, there's been some changes in my professional life. And basically, I did something I was supposed to be moving this month, basically. My 3-year tour at Scott Air Force Base, Illinois was up, and I was going to be moving somewhere else. But they allow you to extend your tour if you have a junior in high school in your family. So I applied for that, got accepted, but then it looked like I was going to just kind of stay in my same job I was in for another year and a half, and it had really gotten kind of stale. So I went to my managers. I said, hey, there's a lot of other jobs on this base for some of my career field. Can I switch jobs? And they said, sure. And they set me up with another job. And so I stayed at the same physical location, but I went across the street to a completely different building, working for a completely different 4-star general, and completely changed jobs. And when I arrived there, one of the things they said is, hey, as an additional duty, you're going to be an augmentee for the commander's battle staff. The commander's battle staff is stood up whenever there's a crisis, and we need people to do it. And normally you just sit, and you've participated in these before, I assume, Josh, but I'm going to describe it for our listeners. So somewhere on the base is a big empty room with like a data wall on one end, kind of a conference table and a command row up front, and then a tiered like stadium seating, 5 rows of like desks where functional experts of every different functional area can come and gather all together in one room. And just like your boss did with her staff of 5, you can hand out tasks to people across an entire spectrum of areas and functional specialties.
Right, and it's very important to make this distinction, because the typical way that stuff flows in the military is that the commander hands it down to the commander of whatever function, but that they're in a different building, and so they have to schedule time or a phone call or an email or something. These people don't typically sit in the same room. Like, the commander can't walk into some place and just throw a complex problem into the room like a grenade and walk out and expect it to get solved. That's what the battle staff is for.
Right. It's to get all the people together in one room. And they're like the tip of the iceberg. The people in the room represent a whole other organization that's somewhere else. So
right. Those people know what the organization is capable of, and so they're like the experts. And so like when people are trying to solve problems, this person knows what can be done, not necessarily how to do it, but he knows that he can call somebody back in his shop and get something done.
So the organization that I belong to, the 4-star that I work for, is Air Mobility Command, and they have the mission of global logistics. They do air mobility of moving things place to place in military aircraft. And also contract aircraft. They do aerial refueling. They do aeromedical evac and other mobility missions that have to do with just moving cargo and people from place to place all over the globe.
And people, if that sounds boring, just think about like having a global conflict, like say Afghanistan, just pulling a random example. And these are the people that have to figure out, okay, there's this X number of people in Afghanistan that are going to need Y amount of food in Z number of months. How do we get that food from all over, wherever we're getting it from, to them in the time that they're going to need it?
Yes, using a limited number of aircraft and air crews that are available to do everything else that needs to be done everywhere in the world.
Right. Talk about the most complicated efficiency problem ever.
And on top of that, they're also doing things like taking retirees and putting them in the extra seats and flying them from place to place, which will come into this equation.
Oh, wow. So
when I got there, I thought I was going to be trained to be an augmentee to the crisis battle staff in the back row representing the cyber functions, the communications functions. But due to a misunderstanding, they trained me to be an executive officer where I'd sit in the front row next to the director of the battle staff.
Oh, dear.
And yeah, so I thought I was just going to be, the guy in the back of the room taking the random tasks related to computers and networks. And instead they trained me to be in the front. But again, this is a month ago, and nothing was going on in the world. And they're like, okay, we're just going to put you on this on-call roster. And if ever anything comes up where we need to stand up this crisis battle staff, and it happens to be your week, we'll give you a call.
Oh, and this never happens, people. Like, this never happens.
So the first week I got put on the schedule. They scheduled me for a week of nights, like 7 days straight, 12-hour shifts of nights, and then the COVID-19 crisis starts to hit, and they stand up the battle staff. And so I instantly go from, hey, you were supposed to come into work on Monday, to at normal duty hours, like banker business hours, to, hey, come in at 6 p.m. tonight and stay till 6 a.m. tomorrow morning and do it every day for the next 7 days.
Oh, that first night must have been a killer.
And when they say 12-hour shifts, they're not really 12-hour shifts, because you got like an hour-long transition briefing at the end of it. So it's 13 hours. So it was 91-hour week.
Yeah, and then there's those little things like, driving home and eating a meal. Those intrude.
So this was like 2 days after we recorded the last podcast, which is why it took like 5 days for me to finish the editing and get it put up.
Yeah, so if anybody complained about the podcast coming out late, you should feel bad.
So they stand up the battle staff, and this is when COVID-19 was still kind of a new thing. The coronavirus was just something happening in China, and I remember saying out loud to people, how bad could this be? What am I going to be doing on nights? I'm probably just going to be surfing Facebook all night. Ha ha ha. Little did I know.
Little did you know the whole country was going to go on lockdown, and boy howdy did we need stuff getting from point A to point B.
My first night, I come in and this place is buzzing like a beehive. I mean, there are people flying out everywhere. We get the brief. The 2-star general is in there taking the brief directly every single time. Normally that's the kind of thing that gets delegated down the chain really fast. And he was in, and he's like, okay, people, let's keep this thing moving. And I was busy all night from like 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. My replacement came in, and I was like, I cannot believe how busy I was over the last 12 hours. And I'll just give you a little taste of the kind of things we were dealing with. So on Monday, it was still just kind of trying to understand what was going on, and the CDC had designated 4 countries as CDC level 3 countries. And there was rumors that the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff or the Secretary of Defense was getting ready to issue a memorandum restricting travel to or from or through CDC level 3 countries, which at the time were Korea, Iran, Italy, and China. That was it. Like, as long as you didn't come to, through, or from one of those 4 countries, it was going to be okay.
And that through part is a real problem when you're talking about global supply chains.
Oh, yes. And yes. yes. So we're like, how bad could it be? But we were making briefings and taking calls, and we're stood up as kind of like a focal point. So Air Mobility Command has, 14 major bases and another 2 or 3 dozen minor bases all around the world that are stops for these kinds of things, where you don't realize there are people there until they call up and say, hey, we just had an air crew last night that slept in Korea and took a rotator over here and drove up to the gate from a bus, and they were in Korea last night. What do we do? And
I don't know. Kick them out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, if you kick them out, now we don't have anyone to fly this plane that's sitting on the airfield, and the whole, mobility enterprise gets backed up.
Oh, it's a whole house of cards that we brought down by a couple people with the sniffles.
Yeah. So I'm sitting on the front row next to an 06 or an 05, a colonel or a lieutenant colonel, and my job is to, one, kind of keep this information flow moving on the staff from the front rows to the back rows, where we've got functional experts that do base security, they do logistics, there's a Surgeon General's representative, there's a operations representative, communications representative, everything you can think of. And there are so many problems across these 40,000 people that we represent and have command authority over. Anything, I can see from the look on your face that your mind is reeling with all the possibilities, and yes, all of that.
I am reeling because the way that decision making works in the military is because we don't train many people to actually make decisions. We train people to cover their butts and to up-channel stuff. And so people have a question, like the aircrew question, like, really? Like, you should know better. Like, oh, this country's now on lockdown because of this virus. Oh, hey, these people showed up at the gate. What do we do? I don't know, idiot. Use your freaking brain for a second and then do something. But no, they channel that question to you. So there's 40,000 people all over the world with stupid questions that all have to get solved in the room that you're sitting in.
I love the way that you classified that as covering your butt, because that's exactly what it is. And after about 2 days of this, my 2-star was so sick of it that he's starting to repeat. He's starting to bang his drum over and over that while that is kind of what we train people to do, that isn't what's in the doctrine. The doctrine is that we have centralized authority and decentralized execution. As in, we make a decision at the top, but then we empower you at the bottom of the chain of command to make a relevant operational decision that will be the best for all the people involved and still get the job done.
Which works perfectly until somebody screws up.
And then we play the blame game and prove to them that the real name of the game is cover your butt.
Exactly. So do as we say, not as we do.
Yeah. But to be honest, Josh, everything was moving so fast and changing so much that there was no other way you were going to get things done unless you were doing the doctrine, unless you were doing decentralized execution. The wing commanders that were sitting around calling up to headquarters asking for a decision about every little nuance in the guidance weren't getting anything done. They had to just make decisions on the ground.
And I'm sure some of them were capable leaders that were able and confident enough in their skills to do that. But I'm sure a lot of them were not.
We have 2 air mobility operations wings, one in Hawaii that kind of covers the Pacific theater, and one in Germany that covers the European theater. And there was this fascinating contrast between the two, because one of the leaders was like you just described, a very capable leader that understood the strategic direction, that was willing to take risks, and the one in Germany was not at all. He was kind of tight, anal retentive and very cautious and waiting for direction on everything. And it was a real contrast, because every morning when I turned over to the 2-star, we'd have to brief what was happening in both theaters, and it was a tale of two cities.
So, sir, everything in the Pacific's actually humming pretty good. Couple of minor speed bumps, and everything in Germany has come to a screeching halt.
Yes.
Oh.
Now, to be fair, there were hot spots in both theaters. Japan was having problems, and Korea was having problems, and then Italy was having problems, and Iran and Iraq, and And as you know, we have cargo and people moving through both of those places all the time.
All the time.
This really came to a head when on Thursday the CDC upgraded all of Europe virtually from. Okay, there was 3 things that happened in rapid succession that just threw everything on its ear. One was the president had his brief where he gave the proclamation denying travel from Europe to the U.S. for the next 30 days.
Wednesday night's thing. We have got to talk about that.
Yeah. Then the Secretary of Defense issued a memorandum forbidding travel from anyone in the Department of Defense, military members, or anyone funded by the Department of Defense, like civilians and families, from to or through CDC level 3 countries. And then within about 12 hours of that, the CDC upgraded from 4 CDC level 3 countries to 33.
Oh dear. Like, oh dear.
Yeah.
So at some point, like so I'm imagining in my head this room, this chaos room that you're describing of everybody trying to solve all these problems, everything from how do we feed the troops in Iraq to how do we deal with the guy that went on leave and is now locked out of the base.
Yes.
And I can, in the corner,
yes.
I can imagine some little 2-stripe airman with different colors of highlighters coloring in a big world map just so everybody has that visual of like, where can and can't we go?
Right? Yeah, and it's changing by the minute, and then bam, another 29 countries. Here you go, deal with that.
I just colored
Holy
these
crap.
green. Dang it! I need a new map.
And then on the next day, then they issued another memorandum forbidding any, basically putting a moratorium on all travel anywhere for the military members. And there was this really weird tension coming up where people were starting to realize that the military can't tell civilians what to do. They can only tell people wearing a uniform what to do. So there was a lot of nuance happening where, like, a person wearing a uniform couldn't go on leave, but their families still could travel.
So that's interesting. I imagine there's a lot of scenarios where, this all took off this week. So there's probably a lot of people, a lot of families that had big plans for spring break. They were going to travel and go somewhere, then maybe not necessarily cancel it, even though, husband or wife is locked down on the base.
Yes. And of course, as an organization as big as the United States Air Force or Air Mobility Command has impacts on all branches of the service, global logistics there's people in all the stages all the time. There's people about to travel, there's people that are traveling, and there's people that have just traveled or in transit. And there was so much chaos, Josh. Like, imagine if your family was about to move overseas to, say, Korea, and this is all happening to start ratcheting up. Maybe they've already shipped your household goods and you're already living in a hotel.
Yeah, no kidding.
And the day you're supposed to report to the airport, all this uncertainty arises over whether your flight's going to depart or not.
And I've got no place to live. I have no way to pay this guy.
Right. Where am I going to live? How do I pay for the
Yeah.
hotel? Where's my family going to go? How are my kids going to be in school? Every bit of that chaos.
And they sent all the non-essential people home earlier this week.
Yeah, and as they start ratcheting up also all of the restrictions on where you can and can't travel from and to and through, then they start basically increasing the circles. Like, okay, now you can't go on leave outside the local area. Well, what do we do about people that are already on leave? Do we call them back? Okay, now we start calling people.
Yeah,
today
today
they did a
maybe
leave
not.
recall.
Ugh. Recall.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just like that. Today maybe not, but then tomorrow, and it was like, okay, well, what if they say that tonight? What do we do tomorrow? And so busy every night, all night.
Oh, I know exactly what to do in this situation, Ben. We call the commander's battle staff. They'll have an answer for us.
Yes, exactly. So my magnum opus, as I was leaving the last day, and after 7 days of not even getting up to go to the bathroom for 13 hours every night, I started a FAQ, a frequently asked questions, where I was trying to gather all this information in one place where I had sanctioned answers to the most general version of every specific question we were getting answered that would still get it, so that when somebody called, we could either point them to the FAQ or they could find it on their own and not have to call us.
Just the first line. We need a first line of defense filter for all the stupid nonsense to just get the important stuff to come to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it was about. Information flow. Millions of emails and phone calls and PowerPoint slides and to their credit, they had set up a very good SharePoint site that, internally people could go to and see the latest guidance and directives and decisions by the commander and all those kinds of things. And yeah.
You can tell we both used to be communications guys when we get, like, you started talking about SharePoint, like a SharePoint site with such passion, and I'm over here like, yes, a good SharePoint site can solve a lot of problems.
And it did too. All right. So that was my week as the director's executive officer in the Air Mobility Command Crisis Battle Staff.
So are you still on the battle staff?
So my week was over, and the 2-star that was running this thing was recognized that doing someone for 7 consecutive days basically was endangering them personally and also endangering the mission because someone's effectiveness lags after that kind of operations tempo. Yeah. Like I've never had that high of operations tempo when I was deployed.
Yeah, so you were people were asking you basic questions. Like, hey, you want a sandwich? And I can just see the blank stare in your eyes for, what's a sandwich?
Yeah. So, that post that I was in is augmented across, a large staff. And there's a manpower pool of people that does it. And I, in the first week, had done more than anyone else by a factor of about 2. So, it's going to be a while for my...
Yeah, part of that being the fact that the exec is always like a point man for things to get done. And the second part being you're Ben Rich and boy sucker, like you're going to excel in whatever the freak you do. It's like you're going to put everybody else to shame. Great, I got to come in and do Ben Rich's job. The 2-star, after the first briefing, looked at your replacement and was like, God, I wish you were Ben Rich.
Josh, that kind of happened. Actually,
called it.
The 06 director, as I was walking out of the room, he called me the best exec ever.
The best exec ever. Wow, that's a dubious title to have because being an exec sucks.
Yeah, it kind of does. So I did my 91 hours. And it's going to be a while before my name comes up in the rotation again. Not because I wouldn't volunteer for it if they asked me, but because if I did volunteer for it, my leadership would want to see proof that the other directorates had pulled their weight enough to justify bringing me back in that soon.
Okay, so this brings up the double-edged sword that is military style, like duties like this one. So on the one hand, we have the fact that, it's an extremely high ops tempo. They recognize that they're going to burn you out, and so they're going to let you do it for a week, and then they're going to give you back, do your normal thing for a while. Eventually, you'll come back to this ridiculous job. But for now, you need to take care of you. And that's very respectful and understanding that you can't burn these people out, or else, they're going to go psycho. On the other hand, if you're looking at an organization, now we've got a fresh new kid who may not have any idea what's been going on, none of the processes that have been established over the course of this week, the battles that have already been fought, and all the little pieces of knowledge that are in your head to make everything flow smoother that you developed over the course of that week is gone. We're starting from scratch with a new guy.
And that was a beautiful way of describing it, because there really is this tension between just consuming a single person and the opportunity cost of constant turnover.
Yes. And that's the military in a nutshell, because they're constantly turning over, constantly having to reinvent the same wheel over and over and over again.
So one of the things the comm guys in the back row were having to deal with, that you also were, was, all right, well, while we're dealing with all these problems of global logistics, we also have to operate a staff here, and they are going to be under restrictions as well. Do we have the resources to have people work from home? And so they're trying to answer basically questions about the capacity of our virtual private networking, the security, the availability of laptops, all those kinds of things.
Which is all terrible. I can tell you from experience, all of that is terrible.
It is. And now, to his credit, the DoD CIO saw this as the golden opportunity that it was and gave a 24-hour task for all the commands to come back with their best case scenario and tell him what he needs. And now he's got a blank check to start buying stuff that he couldn't have bought, in his wildest dreams 1 week ago.
This is another thing that military people do. It's like, hey, I need this capability and I need it right now. Well, sir, if you need it right now, it's not going to be cheap.
You know the phrase, never let a crisis go to waste? That's what's going on here. So I took a day off to just go ahead.
No, I was just going to lament about how of course there's no VPN or laptop capability coming out of the military base. You know how much of a pain in the butt those are to administer? It's like every time everybody calls the comm squad. It's like, hey, can I get a laptop and a VPN? They like, you can hear the comm guy go, oh, do you really need it?
Yeah, and this brings up what I want to be another theme of this podcast, and that is, for most of our lives, there's so many things that have become technically feasible that have never been able to transform the culture surrounding them, so we don't know if we can actually do it. Like, yeah, you could work from home, but that's not what we do here.
Oh, you know what?
That's not the way we work.
What you just said is boiled down into a meme in such a perfect way. I have to quote it here, and we'll put it in the show notes. And that is the meme that came out earlier this week, and my wife texted it to me. And like every day I've thought about it, and every day it gets more true. Well, I guess we're really going to find out which meetings could have been emails.
Yes, exactly. Because, we've had this creeping feeling for a long time that our technology and our ability to communicate has made a lot of the old ways of doing business obsolete. But as I once heard a wise man say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And there is a very strong culture surrounding all of this stuff. And it doesn't change overnight. Or does it?
Unless you have some weird giant catalyzing event that forces change.
Yeah. So I took a day basically to switch my circadian rhythm back to days, and I went back to my day job, which had not at all waited for me. It was just piled up 250 emails. And they were in the process of making this immediate transition to working from home. Like, I got to work and they said, you cannot be here.
Nice. Well, thank you. I will go then.
So I picked up my laptop and I went home and I spent like 4 frustrating hours trying to connect to these limited VPN resources and then trying to synchronize 250 emails over, the latency was horrible, the bandwidth was terrible, and it was really frustrating.
Ben, just hit send and receive and go get a sandwich.
Well, the thing is, there's important stuff I had to do in that job. Like, I had, and no one's willing yet. You know how the day before they changed the task deadline, you were still working to the old deadline?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, in my day job, we're still working to the old deadlines. We haven't yet had someone go, okay, we can change the deadlines. Here's our new project delivery date. Here's our new goal.
And that's a failure of your leadership to recognize the higher priorities. It's like, oh, nobody's told me that I can blow all this stuff off, so I'm going to press forward as if I've got to do all this stuff.
Right. And I like the way you expressed that just now, because that's what I want to, that's another theme I want to weave in here. And that is that when you have, okay, let's go to Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. So, in that classic piece of science fiction, they invented robots that were sentient. And the way that they protected human beings from these robots, these sentient robots, was that they gave them 3 laws. And they were in a hierarchical order. The first rule, I'll just read it here. A robot may not
come
injure...
on, whoa. You can't quote this off the top of your head?
You can?
Isaac Asimov's first law is a robot can't actively or through an action cause harm to a human or allow a human to come to harm.
Yes. And then the second law is the robot must obey
a human unless it would violate the first law.
Right, and then the
third law is that a robot will try to preserve itself unless it violates the other 2 laws.
Okay, so let's pretend there's only 1 and 3. We'll leave the orders out. So the first law is that it's got to protect or not allow through inaction a human to come to harm. And the third law is that it needs to protect itself as long as it doesn't violate the other law. Now, Imagine that you just take those 2 laws and you flip them.
That it has to protect itself first and then not allow a human to come to harm.
Right.
So then you would wipe out the entire human race instantly. That's the only way that it's going to prevent it from dying is it's got to wipe out all the humans.
You got it. Something as simple as just flipping 2 priorities in a hierarchical structure changes everything. And that is exactly what we've been seeing in our society this week.
Wow, that's really profound and interesting. I want to explore this. Give me an example.
Okay. So here's an example that's happening in my church. In my church, we take very seriously the necessity of administering to people. we have a mandate to weekly provide the sacrament, which is bread and water that represent the flesh and blood of Jesus. And when they first started announcing quarantines and separations and stuff, they were still operating as if the two priorities were, first, make sure people get the sacrament every week, and second, protect people from germs. But that's just kind of a nuisance.
Okay, so I'm going to take the blood and the body of Christ in my dirty, filthy hands that I've been touching everybody else with, and I'm going to put them into your mouth for a second. It's fine. It's fine.
Right, but they canceled meetings in our buildings, so what they were going to do is kind of set up this like roving team of people that would go around and so we were meeting the spirit of the law, which was that everyone has to stay in their homes, but we were still just completely violating, what was really supposed to be happening, which was protecting people from the transmission of germs.
So I recognize this is a very vital function that has to occur in a spiritual sense, but from the outside looking in, this looks like a Ritz delivery service.
Yeah, well, it's not quite like that, but I'm oversimplifying it for sake of time.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm on the leadership committee of our local congregation, and I tend to be a minority when it comes to these kinds of things because I just don't think like other people do. So they were like, "Well, what do we do about this? The church is closed down. We don't know when we're going to go back. We need to make sure that everyone's taken care of, and it needs to be fair." And these are very good, kind people that are trying to do the best they can. But to me, they still haven't understood the seriousness of the situation. The way they're taking this on, their highest priority is still make sure everyone gets the sacrament, not make sure people don't transmit coronavirus. And so I was resisting it. Go ahead.
Yeah, because you have a bigger picture, right? You understand what's going on, the larger situation of what is happening, and we need to incorporate that in our decision-making process and reprioritize our baseline assumptions.
Yes, exactly. And I was trying to say to them, people, we need to have the sacrament be the second priority here, not the first. And the way they were making the decisions was the other way around.
Yeah, people not dying is the one thing that we need to be worried about here. Everything else is ancillary to that.
Yeah.
So that same mode of thinking is the problem why society is I'm going to do air quote breaking down the way that it is right now. The way people freaking out at the grocery stores is because nobody can stop to think about the bigger picture, and they're all just worried about number one, baby. Like I like to have one fried egg every morning, and so I need to go buy 600 eggs to make sure I have my breakfast for the next 2 years.
Yeah, no eggs. So let me wrap a bow on the church example, because there was one other development.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'd kind of dug my heels in. They'd passed around a document. I coordinated on them, like, this isn't right. We're focused on the wrong thing here. And they're just treating me like, why do you hate nuclear surety? Like, why do you hate people having the sacrament? Because they're number one priority.
Why do you not want to save people's souls, Ben? That's what we're here for.
Yeah. And then yesterday, the governor comes out and puts this stop movement on everyone. And then it was now illegal. Their ancillary solution they'd had to come up with was no longer sanctioned. And they actually had to reverse the priorities and say, okay, number one priority is no longer sacrament. So
two comments on this. One, I guarantee nobody told you or said like, oh man, we should have listened to that Ben Rich guy. And number two, you didn't do the thing that you should have done, and that was walk to the church with your arms outstretched the entire time going, I called it. I called it since day one. Nobody believed me. Bow down and praise me, the big brain that can see the future.
Well, back to the point I was making is that when you really change the fundamental assumption, it transforms what you're doing. I mean, like with school, if your number priority is educate children or have children in the building for 180 days a year so you get state funding, then you make decisions differently than if your priority is don't transmit an infectious disease. And then worrying about how many days they're in the building is secondary.
I like this. You're right. This is forcing a lot of people in a lot of important positions to reevaluate the baseline assumptions. Like every educator in the country was like, okay, we need to teach kids. But they never thought about the procedure of, well, the kids are obviously going to come to school. They're obviously going to sit in this room, and we're obviously going to have a 1-to-30 ratio of somebody with the knowledge dispensing knowledge to these 30 kids. That's how it works. But those are the baseline assumptions, and they work within that box.
Yeah.
This has really, like you said, made people go back and analyze what they took for granted.
Now, one of the chaotic, and this is a complete tangent, but one of the chaotic things that had happened in my life is I've been having problems with one of my teeth lately, and I had scheduled an appointment to finish a root canal on the day that I was finished my 7 days of consecutive night shifts, and then it was during the day.
Oh man, if you are gonna get like seriously drugged up at the dentist, that's the perfect time, coming off of like the world's longest and most stressful shift ever.
Okay, so I've just finished 91 hours of like pure chaos, and then I come off, and I didn't want to reschedule my dental appointment, but it was at 1 p.m, and I'd gotten off at 6 a.m. So I kind of had to stay awake for the next few hours, and I show up at the dentist's office, and I'm sure I had dark circles under my eyes, and I was kind of staggering, and I sit in the chair, and they're like, and they ask you all the usual questions, like, are you in good health and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm fine, but I guarantee I'm going to fall asleep during this.
Listen, Doc, I've had the most stressful week of my life. Give me the good stuff.
Well, they numb me up and they start the operation. I'm kind of drifting in out of sleep, and I'm like waking up when they like stab me in the gums or like burn my lip with the cauterizing thing. I got a freaking root canal. Oh my gosh, it was the worst nap of my life.
Oh, this would have been such a pleasant time if it wasn't for the people drilling into my face.
Yeah.
2 stars.
Anyway, but I don't know if I could even get that appointment now. Like I'm kind of glad I got him to go through with it when I did, because just every day it felt like the number of things in the world that had changed doubled.
You know what? This is a great transition because we just talked ad nauseum about our professional lives. Let's talk a little bit about how our personal lives changed.
Go for it.
Okay, sure. I'll go first. So the biggest thing is obviously, like, what am I supposed to do with my kids now? Because Nicole and I both work. The kids, like Carter was scheduled to go on spring break this past week. So we had paid for and lined up. The school district does a great, like every vacation, they know there's working parents and they have camps. So there was a spring break camp that was going to be at one of the elementary schools where it's like a standard thing. You drop off the kids. They have structured activities all day. Some of it's learning, but mostly it's just, structured chaos. It's like a kennel. It's like just pen them up, and as long as you pick them up alive, it's fine. They might have gotten tore up a little bit by the other kids, but it's fine. That was the plan, and then they canceled it, and then they shut down the daycare for my daughter. Again, luckily my wife, she was already planning on being home on Monday, and then they transitioned. Her boss has kids in the same school district, so he was experiencing exactly the same problems, and she's been teleworking all week. She has her laptop. They have good VPN connections. I set her, like, she took over kind of the new desk setup that I had, right? So I just bought a brand new fancy ultra-wide monitor. Ben, if you, like, tangent. If you don't have an ultra-wide monitor. Yeah. For my new computer, I wore Nicole down and I got a fancy new ultra-wide monitor for it.
Yeah.
And, like, you're laughing because I'm dancing a little bit because it's brilliant. It's the first ultra-wide I've ever had. People, get an ultra-wide monitor. It'll change your life. Anyway, so she took over that. And she's been working there all week, basically. And it's been fine. Like, her job has flowed just fine. She has a structure with the kids. Like, and this is the other thing. Like, we're talking about education. What are we going to do with these kids? Well, I mean, Nicole does research for, a couple of hours. And she's found all of these free resources for elementary school, like, lessons that are completely taught online and interactive. And the kids love it. Like, that's for awesome. 1 or 2 hours a day. Both of our kids sit down with our Chromebooks. And they do just schoolwork while mommy works on the computer. Then for me, like I said, we spent all week transitioning to go remote, and Friday yesterday was the first time. So I knew this was coming, and so when I got off of work late every night, like instead of doing the normal thing, because, by the way, after school karate, all canceled. Nobody goes to the karate dojo. After school dance class, all canceled. Nobody's going to the dance studio. Gymnastics class, all canceled. Nobody's going to gymnastics. So
and there wasn't even time for there to be like uncertainty. Like it was like right up until the moment it wasn't canceled. I mean, it was canceled. It wasn't.
Exactly. And there was no middle ground. There was no, hey, this might be coming. There was, we're having classes tomorrow, no problem. And the next day, all classes are canceled.
Yeah.
And so
it's so sudden.
Yes. And both the dojo and the dance class have transitioned to online, like the Zoom thing. So we have a tablet. Like, this is the thing. Like, this this is another thing like you were talking about. All of the things that we're doing in my household could not be possible without the high-speed broadband internet that is ubiquitous in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have no less than like 6 internet-connected multimedia devices with cameras on them in my house.
Yeah.
So like for karate class, they live streamed the instructor, and then they were using a multi-conferencing tool. And so my son set up the tablet on our ping pong table right at eye level for him. He can see the instructor can see him, and provided feedback the entire time. And he's now done multiple karate lessons completely virtually with all of his friends virtually connected at the same time.
Wow.
Which is crazy. But I spent the whole week like building, I had to build a monitor stand, and then I moved a bunch of like excess peripherals because, again, I'm a computer hoarding guy. So we had like 3 or 4 monitors back in a closet and like some old computers and stuff. And I hauled all of it out of storage, and I set up a separate station for Nicole on the desk right next to this desk that I built for my computer. And so we kicked originally it was for homework for the kids. We kicked all of the kids' stuff off of this desk, and we set up a second station. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be home on Friday, and I'm going to be here, and you're going to be there, and we're going to work next to each other all day. And I know our listeners can't see us. Like, all right, you want to just...
Won't it be great?
Would it be great? I have a big smile on my face. I'm genuinely looking forward to it.
When you guys met, you were in the same unit, but you didn't even interact much then.
Right, because we did different functions. She was HR, and I was, comm. But she, like, literally, like, her reaction was, I don't know. Like, that was Nicole's reaction. I'm like, honey, this is going to be great. And then I went to work on Thursday. And that was the thing. Like, okay, so is everybody ready to work from home? And I was super excited again. I'm like, yeah, I spent all week like setting up a separate station. So I'm going to sit right here, and my wife is going to sit right next to me. And all 3 women in the office at the time looked at me and went, are you sure?
Sucked through their teeth.
Yeah, it's like, is that a good idea? Like, why am I the only one that's excited about this?
Wow.
Right?
They know you, and they're sympathizing with your wife?
Oh, wow. Well, that's harsh.
What?
I just assumed it was a general men versus women thing. Like, I don't like...
Well, did you try it?
Yeah, all day Friday, baby. I sat in this chair. Nicole sat in that chair. The kids sat at the table behind us for half the day, and they went and did other activities. And it was fine. Like, it was nice. Like, I think she was expecting me to, like, stare at her all day, like, sit sideways at my desk and just look at her like, what you doing? Are you writing an email? Who are you talking to now?
No, you got work to do, too.
Yeah, exactly. I stared at my screen. I was doing work. Sometimes I didn't hear what she said to me because I was working. Sometimes she didn't hear what I said to her because she was working. It's a normal thing. So it was fine. Okay. I think it was nice. Maybe if we asked Nicole, if I dragged her in here and asked her, she'd probably say something different, but I thought it was great.
Okay, so it didn't turn out to be the bad thing that all the women in your life thought it might be.
I'm still alive, aren't I?
At least thus far. How did the kids process it? What have they said? What are they doing about all this? So,
obviously Nicole dealt with most of the transition because she's been with them all week. Like for Monday through Thursday, it was her and them, and it's probably better that way. If it was me, like, it would not nearly have been gone as well because I'm the dad. So I don't even think about the kids half the time. I'd have been like, go watch TV or something. Like, I just kept kicking them out of my sight. But she actually built structure. So, like, on Friday, like, we came out and they ate breakfast at, like, a set time. And then Nicole started the computer. And the kids sat down and they opened their computers and they did their lessons. And, like, they did 2 hours of lessons.
Have they started asking you questions like, aren't I going to go to karate?
So, yes. We told them no. Karate's canceled. And Jane doesn't get it. Jane is 5, and so she's just not there yet. Carter is 8. And it kind of hit him the same day it hit me. Like, it hit me on Sunday when 2 things happened. 1, Ducey closed the schools, and 2, we went to the grocery store for our normal weekend shopping trip, and the place was freaking empty. Like, there was just bare shelves everywhere. And, like, for me, it was annoying, but kind of a wake-up call. Like, oh, people are taking this seriously. For my son, it was like the freaking apocalypse because he's like, this is, think about it. If you're a little kid, right. This is literally where all of the food comes from.
Right, and there is none.
And there
Like,
is no
where's
food
the bread?
here.
Where's the eggs? Where's the toilet paper?
Where's the milk? Yeah, like the stuff that we need was just not there. So that he started freaking out a little bit. We explained to him like what's going on. It's like people are getting sick. It is serious, but it can be preventable, and the doctors can fix it as long as there's space. And this is why we're going to stay home. We're not going to go out and talk to other people or interact because we don't want to make sure we don't get sick. We don't want to get other people sick. So we're just going to be safe. And we did a very calm explanation, like this is social distancing. This is not the end of the world. This is not the freaking World War III zombie apocalypse that people think it is. Listeners, if you have bought more than one package of toilet paper in the last 2 weeks, you are a horrible human being, and I hope you suffer for it. like, people, settle the freak down. Like, I don't get it. I don't know where people's heads are at when they're like, oh, I need to buy 4 gallons of milk. Why? You've only ever bought 1 gallon of milk.
Really profound to me that I really like. She says, with the actual biology of this disease, the stakes are just high enough to provoke this response from our governments and our workplaces, but without being high enough to actually cause true mass panic. So what we're getting is like mild mass panic.
What we're getting, the people at the edge of the bell curve, those are the people that are freaking out. And they're causing this headache for the rest of us.
Like, if it were any more serious, there would be, like actual problems, like people stealing from each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if it were any less serious, it might not have provoked this kind of response. They might not have canceled things. And so it's just that weird sweet spot of just serious enough.
I don't want to know what it would have been if it was more serious than this, because already it's annoying enough that I've got to think hard before I go to the freaking grocery store.
So before I tell you about the personal impact on me, I want to take a tangent on something my sister asked me this week. She's like, if this really were the zombie apocalypse, what are your apocalypse skills? So I'm going to tell you what mine are, and then I want to ask what yours are.
Okay.
So, because, when you're a knowledge worker in the modern world, you can feel kind of relevant and productive in most situations. But if you think, if tomorrow the internet stopped working and I had to provide for my family somehow, how relevant would I be in the world? Would I be on the life raft in the philosophical exercise of people? And I'm not doing so good. I don't, I can't plumb, I can't roof. I guess I garden a little bit. I'm not particularly strong. I don't know how to fight. I don't own any guns. I am an expert marksman. Like if this was the actual zombie apocalypse, if you hand me a gun, I'd do okay.
So this is how I'm going to cage this discussion. If the zombie apocalypse happens, we're going to have 2 major city-states in the U.S. One of them is going to be led by Ben Rich, and he will be on paintings in everybody's house, because this is the man that brought us together as a community and told us how to bind together and pool our skills and resources and to create this like semblance of normalcy in an extraordinary time. And he led us from the front, and he was the first one to fall because he sacrificed himself to try to save somebody else or something. Like, you would be a martyr that created this wonderful thing. I have no doubt in my mind, and everybody would praise and love you for it. I would be a medieval dictator sitting in the middle of a castle. Like, my skill set would be the complete amoral way that I would just shoot people down. Like, shouldn't we have a vote? No. Shut your face. Do what I say if you want to live.
So you have constructed, in the time that I've known you, you have made actual chainmail armor.
That's true.
You've built swords.
For fun.
I could see this. You've got some legit apocalypse skills.
So this maybe they're probably not good skills, but like in the time where everybody was fleeing to the grocery store to try to hoard, I would be the one at the Home Depot turning it into a fortress. That's my go-to like zombie apocalypse plan. Like, we have all the materials we need in this place. We're going to turn this into an unassailable bastion of defense. And then we'll figure the rest out later.
Our family just is SOP, because of how many people there are in the house, how many butts there are to wipe, keep, like a Sam's Club 40-pack of toilet paper in the garage. And we just happened to have gotten one recently before this thing hit. And so I didn't even think twice about needing to buy toilet paper because we have plenty. But my kids were playing outside the other day, and they'd left the garage door open, and I was slightly worried that someone could go past our house and see the big thing of toilet paper sitting in the garage, and it could be in danger.
That is the most ridiculous thing to have to worry about in the scenario that we are in. We have people.
Does it not sound plausible, though, that someone would steal toilet paper out of someone's garage?
That's why I'm so angry, because it is totally plausible. There are like entire countries where the healthcare system is collapsing, and society as we know it is at the brink of total and utter anarchy.
And people are hoarding toilet paper.
And people are hoarding toilet paper for a disease that does not affect your gastrointestinal tract in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's it. This is a weird, societal-wide case study in when something tips. Like, why did it tip? Because we're kind of connected on TV and the internet, and just this idea got seeded in the zeitgeist of there's going to be a toilet paper shortage. Somebody just put a video or something on the internet and it went viral. And
so I am like 100% on board, because for a while here in Arizona, tortilla chips, you could not get tortilla chips anywhere. And like, I am 100% convinced that there was this big crowd of people like at the governor's office, like, Governor Ducey, there's no toilet paper. What do we do? And there was some tortilla chip lobbyist or some executive in the crowd that went, yeah, and there's no tortilla chips either, guys. All the tortilla chips are going. And then all the tortilla chips flew off the shelves. The other weird part about this thing is I don't know anyone personally who has hoarded toilet paper. I don't know anybody in my life.
Yeah,
everybody
me
I've
either.
talked to makes like, so everybody makes fun. It's like, I don't know who these crazy people are buying all this toilet paper. So either like somebody's lying to me and it's like, oh yeah, those people are crazy. I only bought 65 rolls instead of 40. Like, or I don't know, like who is actually buying all the toilet paper?
Yeah, you're right. And the same as the fact that I don't know anyone that's hoarding the toilet paper, I also don't know anyone or know anyone that knows anyone. I'm on like Kevin Bacon rules here that's been infected by this thing, and yet it's having such a profound impact on all of our lives.
Yeah. Why is my grocery store empty? Like, I don't know anybody in this town that's been infected. There's been 100 people in the entire state of Arizona that have been infected. Why are all the grocery stores empty?
Yeah. So, but the weird thing is the supply chains are still moving. I mean, unless the level of panic goes up, it eventually the system's just going to catch back up. And there's going to be people with garages full of, like hand sanitizer or whatever.
And won't they feel stupid? I hope they feel super stupid.
Yeah, now, I saw a Costco note that had gone viral about we will not accept returns on the following items. Yeah, screw those people.
That's why. For those people. Don't come crying back to us 3 months from now when you liquidated your 401k because you wanted to buy toilet paper. Now, I will say something funny. I was doing again, we have not panicked. We do our normal grocery shopping. I was out there doing my normal weekly grocery shopping, trying to just piece things together. It's like, oh, Nicole said we need chicken. There's no chicken. I guess this turkey meat will have to do. But we needed rice, and there's no rice.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with rice. Well, now there was 2 bags left, but they were giant bags, like 25-pound bags of rice. And we needed rice, so I got a 25-pound bag of rice because that's the rice they had.
Right.
But then I go to the checkout counter, and the lady's just buzzing my stuff, the boop. And I'm like, how has it been here? And she's like, people start lining up an hour before we open. It's been crazy. I'm like, I go, I don't know why people are freaking out so hard. Like, everybody just needs to calm down and do their normal shopping. And then at that moment, this lady grabs my 25-pound bag of rice and slides it across the booper, and then just gives me that little look like, really? And
25-pound bag of rice. She doesn't know the shelf's empty.
Yeah, it would have been much slicker for me to just keep my mouth shut, but I couldn't help it. I'm like, it was the only bag left. And I just felt so dumb after that.
That's great. So this brings out something that has been happening in life. We like to complain about the violations on our privacy and the intrusions in our lives with our personal information. But this is an area where I've actually enjoyed the invasions of my privacy. I have provided my email address to companies for whatever reasons. I've joined their frequent shoppers club. I have installed their app. whatever. I have like the Papa John's app or the grocery store frequent shoppers club. Anyway, these people now have my email address and recognize me as one of my customers. So at some point in the week, they made some kind of strategic decision that was relevant to me, and then they utilized the fact that they have my personal information to communicate this to me. And almost without exception, I've enjoyed these things. Like, I've liked the communications I've received. Hey, here's what we're doing to protect your health and safety. Hey, here's what we're doing to make sure our employees don't suffer during this time. Hey, here's what you can do to help us. And I found these to be really informative and interesting, and I like that they can target me as one of their customers in this time.
You are such a weird person, because I have had exactly the opposite reaction to these emails that you have. Because, yeah, I agree. Every person I've ever given my email address to ever has sent me the, here's what we're doing about COVID-19 email address. Like, it's critical information for me to know. And it's stuff like, it blows my, like, I don't care. I don't care what you're doing for COVID-19. I straight up don't care. Like, University of Phoenix, where I'm getting my master's degree through, is already a 100% online school as far as I'm concerned. I have never seen a person in real life that is employed by University of Phoenix. And they insist on sending me 3 emails this week explaining how they're protecting me from COVID-19. And every time I look at the email, I'm like, unless it's a computer virus, you guys are fine. Stop emailing me.
Okay, but like my favorite restaurant, here's why it's safe to go through the drive-thru right now. Here's what we're doing about that. Or my grocery store. Here's what we're doing to make sure that when you come here, you can get the things that you need. Or my kid's school, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're making sure that your kids have work to do, or we're going to make sure.
Our schools have done nothing for our kids.
It's not just like narcissistic and self-centered. Like, here's how we're preserving our business in this time when we're otherwise going to take a huge economic hit. It's felt like genuinely like interested in the public good, the communications I've received from businesses.
Well, that's just good marketing. That's because the people that wrote those emails wrote them in such a way as to make you think that they have the world's best intentions at heart, when in reality, there is information the company needs to put out. For example, I was in charge of writing these emails for our tiny accounting firm.
But I like that we live in it. Yes.
All right, so when I wrote these emails, I am an amoral, narcissistic jerk. And so, like, I didn't put in a bunch of stuff about wishy-washy, like, we're going to protect everyone from COVID-19, and here's how we're going to come together as a community of clients of this accounting firm. No, I said straight up, we're closing our doors. Here's what you need to do. Of course,
that's a little bit out of the scope for an accountant. I'm sure you made it relevant to what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And that's all we did. It was like, here is the information you need to know. And frankly, I don't care how you feel about COVID-19. Like, we are doing this, adjust.
And I'm sure your customers found that relevant and important to them.
So this is an important distinction my boss constantly tells me. We don't have customers, we have clients. Because customers are always right, and clients can be fired.
All right, so I want to tell you about the kind of personal impact on my family, because my kids are older and it's had a very different impact on us. So immediately there was kind of like, hey, we're about to come up on on spring break, and maybe it'll just be 2 weeks instead of 1. There's this uncertainty that was hanging over the head of any of these decisions, and church canceled almost immediately. My church has been very proactive about this. They just canceled the whole thing straight from Salt Lake City all the way around the world,
minus the sacrament.
And then yes, well, that's a local decision. That's something different. And then when it really hit home for me is when my 16-year-old daughter had come home from school on Friday, a week ago yesterday, and she had this funny look on her face, and she wanted to talk, which is weird. She never just wants to talk. She didn't have work because work had just canceled. She's a swimming instructor at the YMCA, and she comes in the house and she kind of sits down. So I stopped what I was doing. I looked at her and she's like, "Dad, what's going on?" I'm like, "Well, sweetheart, what do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, my superintendent just came over the loudspeaker and told us they're canceling school, and she didn't know how long." She's a junior, and she'd been getting messages that they were canceling prom and like the band concerts and all those kinds of stuff. And I realized this was her September 12th, 2001. Like, her whole world is changing right now. Everything. In a way she doesn't even have a context or a way to package or understand. And it was completely, just flooring her. I mean, they were canceling prom, they were canceling graduation. There was no clear way for how she was going to get the rest of her school year's worth of education. Her work had canceled. Just everything had changed. And it really is. It's September 12th. The whole world's different now.
That's a really good way of putting it, honestly. Like, just kind of caging it into our terms. Like, that was probably the catalyzing event when we were younger. My kids are still, obviously my kids are much younger than your kids, but like I said, my son was old enough and cognizant enough to realize that something's going on. My daughter will probably blow all this off, like I'm assuming that, because we still, today, we're in the middle of this. Like, we're recording this in March. We're still in the middle of the whole thing, and frankly, I'm expecting this to last a lot longer than what people are saying. There was a great...
Yeah, me too.
This is a reference to a 30 Rock, the TV show, and this applies to so many things. And I love this quote so much. It was an airline pilot that came on the loudspeaker and says, "Hey, everybody, we're going to be delayed about 15 minutes." And then, like, somebody asked him, "It's like, hey, why do airline pilots always say 15 minutes?" They say, "Oh, it's the perfect amount of time. It makes people realize that they're going to have to wait, but it's not long enough that they're going to get mad about it." This is how I'm kind of caging everything that we hear from the government. It's like, oh, we're going to cancel school for like 2 weeks. Oh, we're going to delay everything for like 90 days. Like, they're doing these kind of short intervals. They're telling us these short intervals to try to just get us through. Like, well, we can suck it up for this amount of time. When in reality, I think anybody that's thought about it or has seen what's going on around the world,
this is going to be longer than this.
This is going to be very, very long. Like, I've seen some people throw out there that it's going to be as long as like 18 months. That's the longest I've seen. I doubt it'll be that long.
Whoa.
I doubt it'll be that long, but I can easily see this going into next winter.
See, I was wondering if it wouldn't have come out enough by the time August rolls around that we would still have the Magic tournament in Las Vegas.
I'm not going to lie to you, Ben. That has been like the two things. There's two things in my life that I've been most concerned with. One is my family was planning on going to Legoland again at the end of July, right before school started back up. And Legoland is currently closed and no date on when it's going to reopen. And then we have the trip at the end of August for Magic Fest in Las Vegas as the 1-year commemorative anniversary of the start of the Bad at Magic podcast. And I was super looking forward to both of those things, and they are totally in the air.
So I'm calling this the blip. The blip is the term that they used on Spider-Man Far From Home to describe the thing that happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where like half of the population disappeared for 5 years and then all reappeared at once. Because whenever this thing gets over, life is going to go back to normal, and there's going to be kids that live through this that just had a blip in their lives. Like, my 14-year-old is the lead in the middle school theater production of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He's Charlie Bucket, and it's canceled. They've spent 3 months memorizing their lines, practicing the production, and it's never going to happen.
Devastating.
Okay, Here's one area where it's tremendously impactful. I have one son right now who's a full-time missionary in California, and another son that was supposed to leave in 2 weeks for Chile.
Oh, geez. Oh,
and
yeah.
The church,
how does that work out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So my son in California is in lockdown, and of course, when you're a proselyting missionary, there's nothing for you to do, and they don't all of a sudden change all the rules and say, okay, it's okay for you guys to watch TV and play video games. You still have all those lockdown rules, so now it's just like stir-crazy teenage boys. So my son, whose stomach has been bothering him...
Like, I get that this is supposed to be a spiritual time in a young man's life when he's going out and putting forth the good word and the message, but dear God, if he can't even leave the building because of this external thing that he has no control over, at least let the kid play some video games.
Okay, there's a video that went viral of some missionaries in Italy who've been on lockdown for several weeks that have just been like going around the house doing stuff because they're bored, and it's been very much like also another thing that's been going viral, the movie Tangled, where Rapunzel's locked in the tower and every day she has all the little things she does to keep herself busy. Yes. They did it to the music from that, and it's a couple of missionaries, and it's fantastic. Anyway, so my son's been locked up and his stomach's been bothering him, and he went into the hospital yesterday and he was diagnosed with acute appendicitis. So this morning he had an appendectomy, and I got photos from from one of the doctors who happens to know about the church and what's going on. But my son is in a hospital in California all by himself. He can't have any visitors. He's just like, it's nuts. And my other son that was supposed to be leaving in 2 weeks for the missionary training center and to get his language training, he is not now. Basically, they're coming up with contingency plans to train him in place with the assumption that things will go back to normal in a reasonable period of time, and he'll still be able to go to Chile at some point. And they may send my first son home early, even though it's supposed to be 2 full years. They may send him home in the next month or two.
Just because of the lockdown or because of the appendicitis?
Well, one of the things they're doing is they're bringing back all of the American missionaries that are basically deployed to other foreign countries. They're going to bring them back to the States. And so they're going to have this surplus of missionaries in the States. And so they're going to take all the ones that are nearing the end of their time in the States and just send them home early.
So I feel like this is I don't know. This is your missionary son's Vietnam, right? Like he's got to stick it out.
Yeah.
Like you just gotta do your time. Like they're trying to call you back for like reasons like, no, this is what I signed up for. I'm doing the mission here. Like I don't know.
It's the blip though.
It's
an honorary release for no reason, and it won't be an asterisk in his records or anything. It'll just be you will only serve for 20 months instead of 24.
Will it though? Because there's going to be those like, oh yeah, I was a mission during the COVID-19. You're going to have those old hat missionaries like, oh, I remember when Ebola broke out, I stuck it out in Uganda, but it's fine. You get a little sick, you got to come back from California.
Except that it isn't. I mean, we like to think that this is the only time this has ever happened, but if you go back in history a little bit, there are other times in history where there's been blips. There was Olympics that got canceled because of World War II. There was, the Spanish flu of 1917, or there have been other times where there've been quarantines and normal life has not gone on as normal.
Okay, this is a good transition point. Like, obviously, good luck to your son. I hope he recovers from his acute appendicitis. Oh, and I actually would be remiss in my duties if I didn't ask how long had his appendix been burst before he had it removed?
He had been hurting for about a month. It was perforated. I don't know how long.
Okay. I have to ask that question because Nicole, from what I understand, is a medical marvel because her appendix had fully and completely exploded inside of her for 4 full days before she went in and had it checked out.
Holy crap.
Yeah, she was at PT when her commander told her, in ROTC, are you feeling okay?
You need to go.
Yeah, you need to go. Anywho, no, but this is a good transition to, you're talking about with the blip and things, and like you said, Olympics in the past have been canceled. Life goes on. After this is all over, everything's going to go back to normal. Now, is it though? Because one of the things that you had mentioned before, and the things that we had talked about just a little bit, is this might be inherently different because of the development of the interconnections that we have, like the high-speed internet, the connectivity that we have has been unparalleled than it ever has been in all of history. So is this... I joked with my boss about this on Friday, but at the same time, if you're a business owner and you're not thinking this, then you need to. She has her entire office working remotely right now. If everything goes well and everything functions and everything works and the work gets done and the processes flow and the clients are happy, is there a reason she needs to
never go back?
Why does she need to keep paying rent on that building?
Yeah, this could be transformative.
It could be if people
and the only things that were holding up were laws and problems that you needed physical signatures, you needed a professional place for your customer to come. But if we start questioning the necessity of those kinds of things, then why can't everything change?
Even the signatures, we get around that all the time because we need signatures, but they can be digital. Digital signatures are 100% acceptable, and we've developed with our new voice over IP, we are able to accept SMS text messages. We have had clients literally print out their documents, sign on the signature page, take a picture of it with their phone, text it back to us, and that is, by all definitions of the law, everything that we need to continue processing their paperwork.
Okay, so like you said, as we're transitioning from, first we were talking about what's going on in the world, what's happening in our families, now let's make some predictions about the future. So I want to hear you state what you're saying in the form of a prediction. What do you think will happen in the world of telework following when this thing ends?
So I believe that one of the biggest barriers to telework being much, much more present in modern society is an inherent distrust that managers have for a lot of their employees. If I let this joker, this slacker work at home, productivity is going to decrease. Now, What I don't think that they've thought about is the cost savings of not having a physical location. Or like, yeah, maybe you're only going to get 80% out of this guy, but is that 80% covered by the fact that you don't have to pay for air conditioning for him anymore? Like, this is going to be a wake-up call for a lot of small to medium businesses where, we really could outsource this entire function, or all of these people could work from home just as effectively, and it makes my bottom line a little bit better. So this is like a practical application, a forced practical application in can telework work for my business?
Yeah. So what do you think?
My prediction is there's going to be a lot more a lot more people that work from home, and it's going to be a lot more acceptable and accepted in both the business side and the personal side. Like, there's going to be a lot of stay-at-home moms that actually work full-time jobs. Like, they just don't leave the house. I think that's the first and the most, like, in your face. This is going to have the biggest thing this is going to have, and I don't know any like acute predictions or specifics about this, but this is going to have a huge impact on the economy. And one thing that we haven't talked about at all is the ridiculous market state right now, because it's all over the place. Like, it tanks because of the coronavirus, then it comes up a little bit because of promises of stimulus, and it crashes right back down again when everything falls to pieces. People are not going to spend money. People are not leaving the house. People are staying home. So, like, gas, just the fact that how much money I'm going to save on gas is going to be great, Ben. I'm going to spend so much less money on gas.
Oh my gosh. Oil is down to like $20 a barrel. It hasn't been that low since like 1981.
Nobody's buying it. Like, why? I'm not leaving the house. There's restaurants, like, widespread. Every mom and pop restaurant is going to be gone in 3 months because they just are not going to have the patronage to keep their doors open.
Wow.
There's going to be a ton of small businesses that just cannot accept. Small businesses live and breathe from month to month. Like, there is no slack in the system for them. And so, like, the government can talk about low interest small business loans all day long. That is not going to keep these people open long enough.
They can't keep their doors open and pay all their staff and stuff like during the quarantine. But when it's over, I think demand will go back up to the usual levels, and something will have to fill it.
Okay, sure, demand goes back up, but like, you're going to go to a bank as a small business guy. It's like, oh, I had a small business that tanked because of Corona, and now my credit is shot to hell. I need you to lend me $60,000 so I can start up again. Like, and the economy is already going to be bad. Like, lenders are going to be very skeptical and very cautious. Like, small businesses are going to be hurt really badly, I think. But that's not necessarily means that we're going to go into some ridiculous depression with widespread unemployment. Like, we just saw earlier this week, like, Amazon is hiring like 100,000 workers right now, and I'm sure their hiring is going to go up even more.
Yeah, my grocery store is hiring temporary augmentees.
It's going to shift. There's going to be, like, where the demand in one place drops, the demand in another place is going to increase dramatically. And, like, maybe people that are like, well, I don't really want to, work at Amazon, they're going to hold out for a month. Like, how long without a paycheck can you really go before you start accepting other options?
Yeah, online video conferencing services are probably experiencing a windfall.
Microsoft Teams, like, their new flagship, like, intercommunication business solution.
They made it free.
They made it free, and it crashed. It completely went offline for several hours when basically all of Europe logged into it at the same time.
Yeah. So those are kind of macroeconomic impacts. I want to talk about one a little closer to home. So, I love cinema. I love movies, but I haven't always loved going to the theater and seeing the prices go up and up. It just feels like a dated thing. Like, digital media delivery, the quality of home stereo systems, like, everything is just moving towards how can we possibly prop up the theater industry?
So I have two things for this. You ready? My brother-in-law is an accountant for Harkins Theaters, their corporate office, which is a huge theater chain in Arizona. I don't know if it's elsewhere, probably elsewhere, but whatever. And I ask him every time I see him, so how's the movie business? And he tells me every time, we're hemorrhaging money. Like, before any of this happened, like, movie theaters were on their way out anyway. They cannot get people to go to the theater.
And
This
It's just like the transition that the music industry made a couple of years ago when we were moving off of physical media to digital media. And they were still trying to prop up record stores and CDs and things like that, and the customers just weren't having it.
I'm going to say that was more than a couple of years ago. That for a lot of our listeners, they probably don't know what CDs are. But I'll give you that one because you're super old. The other thing that this happened, I realized this today. So my family, we all went and saw Onward. I think even if it wasn't last weekend, it was the weekend before.
No, it came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we saw it opening weekend. Then we saw it 2 weeks ago in the theater. And listeners, great movie, great movie. Go see it. Fantastic.
Okay, hang on. You're going to steal my story.
No, don't. What? Huh? Go ahead. All right, go ahead. You can have the Onward.
Okay, so we hadn't seen Onward yet. And I saw on the internet that the company did probably what they had to do because they couldn't, once all the theaters started shutting down, they were only in their second run of theaters. And they were like, well, how do we, continue the wave of popularity of a new run movie always enjoys if now we just go cold and dark because all the movie theaters close. So they made it available on Friday at 7 o'clock local. Onward was available like it had been out of theaters for 4 months. Like you could just download it online and watch it.
Yes.
So that's what we did. So my family went. We paid $20 happily to own it, and we all sat around and 10 of us watched it. 12 of us. My sister was here, and 12 of us sat down and watched it. And it only cost us $20 to watch a first run movie instead of the usual $70 or whatever it would have cost. And I couldn't be happier.
This was actually the question that I had because Nicole and I were looking at that on our phones. Like, holy crap, they have Onward right now. And she was wanting to push the buy button because we didn't know what that meant. Because it was Amazon Cinema or something. It's well, hang on, it can't be buying the movie forever. This has to be a $20 rental, right? Which made sense in our minds. If this is a first run movie in the theaters currently, then it has to be just a super expensive 3-day rental.
No, they haven't had time to restructure their entire economic model.
But that's got to be where it goes, right? It's got to be first, when it first comes out, it's going to be super expensive and you only get it for a certain amount of time and then it's gone. And then that'll be that way for several months and then you can buy it. That has to be where this goes.
But there's a reckoning to be had for theaters. I don't see how they make it through this.
Oh,
that's my prediction.
The
death has been coming for a long time, but it was going to take a catalyzing event, and I think this is it.
This is going to be the nail in the coffin. I agree. Movie theaters, I can't see them surviving this.
Yeah.
Depending
on how long it lasts.
That's a really good and really specific example of a business that we're not going to see in a couple of years because of this. Good job, Ben. Yeah. That's a really good prediction.
So, a couple other ones I thought, I'm seeing targeted ads for online studies and stuff like that. Digital software delivery, drive up, delivery, those kinds of things. Those are the things that I think that we're waiting for a moment like this to help more people transition onto them that isn't going to go away. They're going to appreciate like you said, maybe the cost savings, the increased convenience, those kinds of things, and maybe they just, for whatever reason, were hesitant to make the change. Now that they've actually been forced to try it, we're not going to go back.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of changes. And there's a lot of changes right now. And some of them are going to spring back and go back to normal operating procedures. I have no doubt in my mind that the school system, being as stupid as it is going to go right back to the standard 30 kids in a room with one teacher just spewing knowledge and having them parrot it back to them.
Yes.
That's going to be school forever. But other things like the movie theaters, I think they're going to be gone forever. Man, the landscape is just going to be entirely and completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's. I was going to ask you next, what are things you think will just go back to normal? And I think schools is probably a good example. I put hand washing. People can be real fanatical about it for a while, and then the thing will pass, and they'll go back to however it was before.
You know what? I have always washed my hands. I think
same.
The one thing I think has changed that I've been more cognizant of is I don't touch my face. Stop touching your face. I touch my beard a lot now, but I'm not touching my eyes or my nose. People, seriously. Yeah. Wash your hands forever. Make this a habit that just lives through this. You'll be happier for it.
Sports will go back to the way they were.
Oh, absolutely. Sports will go back to the way they were.
There's germaphobes out there that have been waiting for this moment, as they feel it's like validation for their existence. But I don't think it's going to last. It'll go back the way it was.
Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting time to be alive. Like, it's a little scary, obviously, but if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, I mean, this is one time where if you can, get yourself out of your fears and get yourself out of your own anxieties over how we're going to get through like the short term, and look at the world at large and realize this is one of those big things that happens, like a world war, or like I don't know what else, like just such a massive thing that happens where the landscape is going to be entirely different. And if you can take the second to appreciate that and just catalog some of this, because these are the stories we're going to tell our grandkids. The same way that people pre 9/11 talked about how you could just walk up to any gate at the airport. Now, This time it's going to be like, back in the day, movies would come out, like they would make a movie and you couldn't get it right away.
Back before coronavirus, there used to be movie theaters.
You had to go to a big building that had a big screen and a bunch of people would sit in the same room like it was a living room, and you would watch it. And that's going to blow kids' minds. Like, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, that's a pretty bold prediction we made here on the Bad at Magic podcast.
Yeah. What? The movie theaters are done?
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to miss? I'm going to miss previews, Ben. I'm not going to know what movies are going to come out ever.
They're going to have to figure out a new way to do that, too.
It's going to be all YouTube. It's just those unskippable YouTube ads for movies.
Yeah. Well, it's a brave new world, Josh. I mean, last time we recorded a podcast, we barely even talked about this, and now it's all we talked about.
Well, and I think this was a big enough. Anybody that's living through this with us right now will understand. This is a huge deal. Like it's not going anywhere. Like, we couldn't not talk about this. What were we going to talk about? It's like,
nothing. There's nothing else to talk about.
There is nothing else because we all worked from home, and so nothing really happened.
As they say, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Right? That's it. That's all it is. All right. Well, this is the perfect time then. If it sounds like we're winding down, we need to thank all of our listeners. Everybody that's listening to our voice now and in the future, thanks for listening. We encourage you to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. We try to put out an episode every 2 weeks. Coronavirus permitting, we try to get it out on like Tuesday or Wednesday. If you haven't yet and you really want to get in shape, this is the perfect time. You're at home not working anyway. Go ahead and sign up on the badatmagic.live. There's a link on the front page to the fitness challenge. You can create an account and start logging your weight loss with Ben and I, and who may or may not be our spouses. Get in on the community action. There may be prizes down the line. Check out our YouTube videos. We are still generating those every once in a while. If those are definitely more oriented towards the fact that we are bad at Magic, the game Magic the Gathering, which is how this podcast started. What else? If you really like what we're talking about and you just think to yourself, man, these guys are so hilarious and charming and charismatic, I wish I could just give them some of my hard-earned money, please go to our Patreon page and subscribe. We do have bonus content that we put out there very seldomly. Ben, I am sure I'm missing something. Oh, Facebook and Reddit. If you want to be part of the community, go to the Facebook page. Ben is fantastic at posting all these funny pictures that are relevant to the episodes and then also relevant to the world in general on our Facebook page. Reddit is a wonderful place where we have discussions with our listeners, make suggestions, we read it, we post back. We love talking to people on the Reddit, and if you have suggestions for the podcast, that's where we're going to see them the most. I'm out. That's it. I have nothing else.
Dude, that was breathtaking. I have nothing to add.